You're listening to the Chad Hasty Show on demand. Good for you. Now download the KFYO app and listen live weekday afternoons 5 to 7 p.m. Central.
Broadcasting from the great state of Texas, this is the Chad Hasty Show. News and views with a Lone Star perspective. You can sound off during the show by sending Chad a text at 806-680-2790. That's 806-680-2790. Or call in at 1-800-687-0790. Now, here's Chad Hasty.
Good evening, Lubbock, Amarillo, Abilene, Wichita Falls, Midland, Odessa, Dallas, Fort Worth, down in Houston, over in El Paso, and anywhere else inside or outside the great state of Texas. Welcome in to the Chad Hasty Show. Glad to have you with us wherever you are this evening, whether you're on your way home, maybe you're still at work, maybe you're, about to pour yourself a nice cold one for the evening, and maybe you're thinking about what we're going to have for dinner tonight. Maybe you're thinking about that already. Wherever you are, wherever you're tuned in, we welcome you in to the show today. We've got quite a bit to get into, including the results from the New Hampshire primary last night. Questions bubbling in the media whether Trump is okay with the moderate voters, the independent voters, the not so sure about Trump voters. Does Trump have a problem? And does that mean he needs Nikki Haley on the ticket? Yeah, we'll get into that today on the program. Also, we've got other national news to get into, lots of national news. We've also got a lot of statewide news to talk about, election news as well, as we're getting closer and closer to Super Tuesday, getting closer to early voting beginning in the state of Texas. And we've got a story that we'll talk about in the next hour. Fewer and fewer Americans are saying that they practice religion, and so we'll get to that story, what it means for our nation. So we've got all of that to get into on the program today. But we also have this border standoff happening in Texas between Texas and the federal government. The federal government saying you can't have that razor wire. We're going to cut it. You've got to allow access. And today, the governor of Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, I'll just read to you what the Dallas Morning News headline is here before we bring on our next guest, our first guest of the evening. Governor Abbott defiant as federal government again demands border access to Eagle Pass. The governor sending out a letter today in a press release saying that Texas has a right to defend itself, a constitutional right to defend itself. And joining us on the phones right now, we've visited with this gentleman numerous times here on the program. He served in the federal government, acting director, U.S. Citizenship, Immigration Services, then deputy secretary for the Department of Homeland Security, and now he's the national chairman of the Election Transparency Initiative. Ken Cuccinelli joining us once again here on the Chad Hasty Show. Mr. Cuccinelli, welcome back. How are you this evening?
I'm better than America. I hope you are.
Well, doing well. I appreciate you for joining us today, because today the governor sent out a very strongly worded letter, a very strongly worded press release saying that Texas has every right to defend ourselves, but there's an issue there, and there's an issue that you've been pointing out on social media when it comes to the actual legal filings that Texas has made.
Yeah, so this letter the governor put out, it reads wonderfully, but it's words, folks. Your mother told you actions speak louder than words, right? Well, let's talk about that distinction. So this arose because the Supreme Court allowed, during the pendency of a case, the federal government to cut Texas's razor wire. That doesn't mean that's how the case will end, but for now, by a 5-4 vote, the Supreme Court has let that practice continue. In the meantime, in the case itself, Texas filed their brief in the Fifth Circuit on January 16th. And you note the letter, Chad. I mean, the governor cites the federal responsibility under Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution to defend every state against invasion. Well, obviously, they're not defending Texas against invasion. He also cites, in strongly worded fashion, Texas's right under Article 1, Section 10 to defend itself. Folks, the Constitution says states, and I don't mean this as harsh as it sounds, I'm just using the words in the Constitution, states can wage war without congressional permission when they are actually invaded. Well, nobody seriously doubts that Texas is being invaded, and don't get the idea I'm arguing for tanks and planes to roll into Mexico. I'm not. But the point is, Texas can use virtually any level of authority or force that it chooses to defend its border against Mexico. And the governor said that in his letter today. Well, then why in Texas's brief in the case is the U.S. Constitution never mentioned? I don't know the answer to that question, Chad, but I do know that for nearly 3 years since the beginning of Operation Lone Star, I haven't gotten a single invitation to a wine and cheese social at the governor's mansion in Texas. And I think the reason is because from the very beginning of Operation Lone Star, I called it what it is, a rolling set of photo ops. They don't send anybody back to Mexico. Yes, they've put out razor wire, so I'm not going to say he's done nothing. But for the billions of dollars spent and the arduousness imposed on your state National Guard, because they've all been pulled from their jobs and everything else, they're not doing anything. They're not returning people to Mexico. They're not stopping them from entering. They put razor wire there, but you go look. When people come across from Mexico, and if they have the will to cross the razor wire, Texas doesn't do anything. Maybe you arrest them for criminal trespass. You know what the maximum penalty for that is? 30 days in jail. And people who are coming from Central America to wherever they want to go in the United States, they say thank you for 30 days of 3 square meals.
Yeah, they'll take
and
it.
Then they go on their way.
Yeah.
And then they go on their way.
So you are also a former attorney general. The governor is a former attorney general.
That's where I met him.
We have a good AG in Ken Paxton. How does this either get missed? How is this not put in there? And why does it matter?
So it's not missed. Texas has fought us like crazy. First, they wanted to say this didn't apply. But as things got worse and worse, they stopped doing that. Now I'm talking over the course of the last 3 years. And really, I think it's just because they don't want to seem harsh or mean, believe it or not. It's an unfortunate self-restraint the governor and the attorney general have imposed on themselves because they don't want to send people back to Mexico is the only conclusion I can draw. And by that, I don't mean they don't want to stop illegal immigration. They may want to, but they're not willing to. There's a difference, right? They want to, but they're not willing to have people stand on the banks and stop men, women, and children and then take them back into Mexico. And Texas has all the people, manpower, and tools, i.e. boats, to do this. And until people don't believe they can get into Texas, they're going to keep coming. And the Border Patrol, until we have a president who's serious about the border, and really it's going to take moving the military down there, that's a whole other subject of discussion. Mm-hmm. But until we have that, it's up to Texas. It's up to Texas. And they can use their law enforcement, their National Guard. Again, yes, the cartels are running this, but there hasn't been, as a proportion of the number of people crossing, there isn't a lot of violence there day to day. You always have to guard against it. You always have to have overwatch on your people because there are cartel members leading these caravans and so forth. So you can't just assume that if you start cutting off their source of income that they won't fight back. But we're not talking about war in the sense of tanks and planes and invading Mexico. Really, the war power in Article 1, Section 10, the very last paragraph, Clause 3, is really how to deal with prisoners of war. You just treat the invaders as prisoners, and you take them right back across the river. There's no immigration law involved. There's no due process. You just take them out of the country. It looks an awful lot, Chad. It looks exactly like Title 42, you remember,
right?
The public health order. You and I have talked about this on your show. We just took them back across the border. When I was the deputy secretary at Homeland Security, we got to the point where over 90% of the illegal border crossers were back in Mexico in under 2 hours. Under 2 hours.
Wow.
And you know what happened? They stopped coming. Not totally, but the numbers dropped dramatically. Instead, we have a Biden administration setting new records upward for illegal invaders. And we have no hope other than Texas.
Yeah.
And, you know, we need them to work harder.
Well, Ken, walk through it if the AG and the governor would have put, actually would have, listed and cited Article 1, Section 10 in the brief, in the actual legal filing, what would that have done? What openings would that have given Texas as far as a defense?
That's a great question. And I will tell you, the Center for Renewing America, where I'm a senior fellow, submitted an amicus brief this week on this subject. So the issue is before the Fifth Circuit, but Texas didn't argue it. They aren't relying on it. But here you have Greg Abbott's letter today.
Yeah.
He clearly knows about the authority. This isn't a mystery. And the founders, James Madison, spoke about it himself in the ratifying convention in Virginia, my home state. This is not a mystery. This is retained power by the states, because let's remember, folks, the states made the federal government, not the other way around. And just like you have the right to defend yourself, and the Second Amendment is there to so that you keep that right. As Scalia said, I think it was Scalia in the Heller case, you weren't granted the right to defend yourself. God gave you that right. That's a natural right. The Second Amendment preserved that right for you from interference by the government. In the same way, states are sovereign, and they have the right to defend themselves. And when they created the federal government, they retained the right to defend themselves against invasions, no matter what the federal government does, and without their permission, and it can be over their objections. Go read it, folks. Article 1, Section 10. It's literally the very last paragraph in Article 1. And it gives Greg Abbott, as the commander-in-chief under the Texas Constitution, the authority to use all of the military and civil authorities under his power to close down that border. And other governors, if he would do that, other governors could send their personnel and could send Texas money, frankly, to do the job and put them under Greg Abbott's legal authority, because that's a key element here. That's what it looks like in the real world. And in the case where your question was, then the court has to confront, look, if Texas has this authority, then this whole cutting razor wire thing, the Border Patrol can't come in and stop Texas from exercising original constitutional authority. We're all used to, we've all been conditioned by the Supremacy Clause, right, in Article 5,
right,
that says that the federal government and its laws trump state laws, and that is true. But this is in the Constitution. This isn't a state law. This is the U.S. Constitution. Nothing trumps the U.S. Constitution under American law.
Right.
So the fact that it's a state doesn't bring this into the Supremacy Clause. The legal authority is the U.S. Constitution, and that is the law of the land. That is the supreme law of the land, and Texas gets the benefit of it, and the court should so find and should dismiss the case against Texas. Well, this is Texas's case to stop the Border Patrol from interfering with them defending against an invasion, and the court should find that they have every authority to do that.
But if you're not going to use the Constitution, they're not going to find it that way.
They're not going to find it. They're not going to find it. And in fact, this sounds strange to people. This is an old notion under American law. The court should say that Texas has the authority to simply stop this behavior. So let me put it the other way. Like in the Bowie case, where the U.S. is suing Texas to stop them from using the buoys. What the court should do there is dismiss the case. And the courts have no business telling Texas when it's being invaded or how to respond. Think back to the founding era, back when Georgia was the southwest border. There's a reason the Georgia governor got to decide whether he was being invaded and what to do about it, because it would have taken literally months to communicate to New York City, which was the capital then, and to both get an answer and to get a federal response to get troops down there to deal with it. As they had to have that authority. And the fact that now you can pick up the phone and call the federal commander-in-chief, Joe Biden, doesn't change who gets to decide. It doesn't change the legal authority involved. And the courts, in those rare occasions when cases like this have gone up, there's one similar case at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, this is a decision for that part of the constitutional body that it's assigned to. In that case, there was a revolt against the state government. And the court said, we have no business deciding this. This authority rests with the Congress, and they've given it to the president to respond. The courts have no business in here. Same thing. The Constitution has given this authority to Greg Abbott under these circumstances, and the courts have no business questioning his exercise of that authority.
They just have to use it in court.
They have to use it.
Yeah,
and they're defend with it.
Ken Cuccinelli.
Owning a shield doesn't protect you from the bullets. You got to pick the shield up.
Gotcha. Ken Cuccinelli, tell folks how they can follow what you're working on.
Boy, I'll tell you, if you want to read my Twitter rants today, you can see them at Ken Cuccinelli. I spent a good bit of the afternoon on this subject. You can also see what we're working on at the Center for Renewing America, where we filed the amicus brief that actually makes the case for the U.S. constitutional authority that Texas has and that Greg Abbott claims but doesn't defend. And we hope you all use it, because it won't just benefit you. It's a no-brainer to know it'll benefit all of America.
Very good. Ken Cuccinelli, hey, thank you so much for jumping on with us here at the last minute. We appreciate it.
Glad to be with you, as always.
That's Ken Cuccinelli here on the Chad Hasty Show. When we come back, your phone calls, your text, and much more. It's going to be a fun show today.
The Chad Hasty Show can be heard all over West Texas, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m. Tune in on News Talk 95.1 and 790 KFYO in Lubbock, News Talk 940 in Amarillo, News Talk 94.7 and 1470 KYYW in Abilene, and in Wichita Falls on News Talk 96.3 and 1290. The Chad Hasty Show. Make it a part of your drive home, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m.
Clay Travis and Buck Sexton.
All right, coming up on the Thursday edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show. Day past the New Hampshire results. All eyes now on what's next. What's going to happen in South Carolina. Other follow-on states we'll discuss, plus Clay.
Got a couple of great guests. Carrie Lake running for Senate in Arizona, and our friend Riley Gaines. All that and more. Thursday edition, Clay and Buck. Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. Tomorrow morning at 11.
Weeknights 7 to 10 on News Talk KFYO.
All right, welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. I want to thank Ken Cuccinelli once again for joining us at the very beginning of the show. Want to hear from you today? You can text in at 806-680-2790. Call in at 1-800-687-0790. We'll get into more New Hampshire stuff coming up in the next hour of the program, so you won't want to miss any of that. Today, it's a couple of totally made-up days, according to the national totally made-up calendar, National Day of thing. Today is National Peanut Butter Day. I don't know what to do about that one. But today it's also National Compliment Day, which Nick is always looking for a compliment. He's always fishing for a compliment. But today's not about Nick. Instead, we ask you this. Give us a compliment, not us about the show, but give us, say something. What do you like about where you live? What do you like about the Panhandle? What do you like about West Texas? What do you like about the Big Country? What do you like about Texoma or anywhere else, wherever you live? Well, we've got listeners all over the place. Some in California. We got a texter out of North Carolina, Alaska, a couple out of Louisiana, a few out of New Mexico, a couple in Kansas who have reached out. What do you like about your city? What do you like about your region? What do you like about where you live? You know, give your place a compliment. You can text in 806-680-2790. We'll be right back.
The Chad Hasty Show, weekdays 5 to 7 p.m. Sound off during the show by sending Chad a text at 806-680-2790.
Diane from Michigan, a disabled senior citizen trying to get by. Henry from Florida, a veteran fighting to make ends meet. Elena from Arizona, a mother struggling to feed her daughter. Hi, I'm Connie Britton, and I support Feeding America because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year, like Diane, Henry, and Elena. Learn more at feedingamerica.org. Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Speeding tickets aren't cheap, and they can make your insurance rates go up too. So if you don't remember anything else from this commercial, remember this. Slow down or pay up. Also, if law enforcement pulls you over for speeding, they'll check your license and registration. So be ready for that. Basically, if you ever wonder if speeding is worth it, the answer is pretty obvious. No way. Speeding is dangerous and expensive. So slow down or pay up. Be safe, drive smart. A message from TxDOT.
The news and talk of West Texas. News Talk 95.1 and 790 KFYO. You're listening to The Chad Hasty Show.
Welcome back to the Chad HD Show. Thank you for tuning in today. You can send in your thoughts on the text line 806-680-2790. That's 806-680-2790. We'll get to the phones here in just a bit. Want to get to this story real quick from the Texas Tribune, which, oh boy, the Texas Tribune, they're in a little bit of trouble. They've got some of their journalists who have decided to unionize, and that's not good. If you follow any of the unionization efforts that have been out there in the news media, usually after the news group unionizes, there's some firings that go on afterwards. There's some layoffs that tend to happen within about a year or so. Mass layoffs that tend to happen. So just something to keep in mind there. In East Texas school districts, flagpole raises questions about America's separation of church and state. Story starts off with a very, very upset man, Kenneth Bitts. The first time Kenneth Bitts drove past the newly constructed auditorium in La Pointe, Independent School District southwest of Tyler, in 2017, he was offended. He saw 3 flagpoles, one for the U.S. flag, one for the Texas flag, and alarmingly to him, one that flew a Christian flag bearing a cross. Bitts considered that third flag a gross violation of church and state separation. Quote, "It's like a glaring red flag," said Bitts, a resident of the unincorporated community of LaRue in Henderson County. As far as I know, it's the only district that flies a Christian flag. Bitts wasn't the only one concerned about the placement of a religious symbol on public property. A national nonprofit group asked the East Texas district that serves fewer than 500 students to take the flag down, arguing that it violated separation of church and state. A principle, long time been widely considered to be enshrined in the First Amendment, in a letter to the district superintendent attorneys from the Freedom from Religion Foundation. These people who are a bunch of nut jobs. They're a bunch of pansies. They never name who they're suing on behalf of. And all they do is go around and threaten small school districts, small businesses, anyone who they feel can't afford to defend themselves. They go through and they issue all these wordy press releases and threats. They're a bunch of jackasses. That's who they are. Students in the conservative community protested by putting their own Christian flags on the hood of their cars. The district ultimately removed the flag and flew one for the Texas Revolution in its place. But the Christian flag is now returned. Oh, no. After the controversy of the flag, the district formed a group of students to serve as a committee that selects what flag flies on the third pole. The group is made up of a student from each grade level with the highest GPA. Meets on a monthly basis under the supervision of a district parent, according to the superintendent. The group has chosen different flags, including one for Breast Cancer Awareness Month and one with the district's mascot. I bet they didn't have a trans flag up, and it probably wouldn't have offended Mr. Bitts if they had put a trans flag up. It also raises money to purchase any new flags, Bill said, but the Christian flag seems to be a frequent choice. Bitts said, based on my observation, the Christian flag has been up since the end of October. The article goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And basically, it's slamming this school district and the students, but it's the students putting up the flag, which they have every right to do. And by the way, this whole notion, separation of church and state, this whole phrase, separation of church and state, it has been so screwed up and misapplied and misinterpreted and everything else. It is just absolutely wrong. The federal government, Congress, is not telling you what religion you must adhere to if a school district or a school building has a flag. The federal government, Congress, is not forcing you to any religion. But because of court cases and because we have a nation that doesn't really read the Constitution, they just buy into what the talking heads say on TV. They believe that any religion, anything that has to do with religion, if I see it in public, oh, I'm offended. That's separation of church and state. Kids praying on a football field, oh, separation of church and state. Kids leading a prayer group in a school, oh, separation of church and state, because someone driving by gets offended. And what do? They go and hire these these attorneys who threaten all this, all this legal action, high-dollar legal action. You got these small school districts, they can't afford to pay for any of it, and they're worried that they'll have to pay for it. I say, keep battling, kids. Keep going. Good for you. Good for you wanting to show your faith. God bless you for wanting to do it, because I guarantee you, the Texas Tribune and others in the media who may pick up on this story, they will make fun of these kids. They will make fun of this school district, and they'll act and treat these kids in a bad way. But if they were flying a trans flag, they'd be conquering heroes. And Mr. Betts probably wouldn't have any problem with it if they had a trans flag or the LGBTQ plus minus flag up. They'd probably be okay with that. That would be okay. Then the kids were celebrating progressive actions. But you throw a cross up there. That's just wrong. You can't do that. Well, these kids are doing it, and I think they should be applauded for doing it. 806-680-2790. If you're on hold, stay where you are. We'll pick you up when we come back here on the Chad Hasty Show.
Clay Travis and Buck Sexton.
All right, coming up on the Thursday edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show. Day past the New Hampshire results. All eyes now on what's next. What's going to happen in South Carolina. Other follow-on states we'll discuss, plus Clay.
Got a couple of great guests. Carrie Lake running for Senate in Arizona, and our friend Riley Gaines. All that and more. Thursday edition, Clay and Buck. Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. Tomorrow morning at 11.
A tornado is on the ground. You're at work, your spouse is at a meeting, the kids are at 3 different schools. Power and cell are out, and your home is inaccessible. Now what? Have a preset meetup plan. Share it with everyone in your family and practice it. Know the emergency plans at work and school, too. Get ahead of what's ahead. Be informed, make a plan, build a kit. #TexasReady. Go to txready.org for more information.
Interview from The Chad Hasty Show? Find it on The Chad Hasty Show podcast today.
All right, we'll get to your text messages here shortly. We'll get to the phones right now. Let's go out to Lynn County. That's where Richard is at. Richard, what's going on this evening?
Hey, Chad. Happy Hump Day.
Yes, to you as well.
Hey, a couple comments about this border business. Our state and local law enforcement, from the Rangers, the DPS, Sheriff's Department, and the City Police, when the Border Patrol has some illegals in custody and are quote-unquote processing them, we need our law enforcement to go up to them and say, these individuals entered the state of Texas illegally. That is against state law, and I am here to arrest them. If you are not arresting them, then you need to turn them over to my custody because we are going to arrest them. And we also need to adjust the busing policy just a little bit. We need to send every bus full of illegals to D.C. Either have buses dropping off illegals in every suburb and community around D.C., or just divide it up into thirds and drop off every third bus in front of the White House, in front of Congress, and in front of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that would send a message. D.C. would be very mad at you for doing that again. You know, they don't like it whenever that happens.
Yeah, but I don't remember us sending them in front of the Supreme Court.
No, you didn't do that. Normally they're dropped off at Union Station. There was one time where they were dropped off right in front of the vice president's residence, which was pretty funny.
But I think that maybe the Supreme Court justices need to have a little realization of what happens when they start getting into politics.
Yeah. Yeah, I could.
Instead of just ruling on the law.
Yeah, I can see some people agreeing with you on that. Richard, thank you. Have a great evening at Lynn County.
You too.
All right, some text coming in. Texture says, I like Lawton Fort Sill because you can hear the bombs from the artillery range. The sound of freedom. Nice, I like that. Another texture with why they love living where they live. I love living in smog-free Lubbock where we can wake up every morning, go outside, breathe fresh air on most days of the year. Yeah, those windy days, though, when it gets dusty, got to be a little careful. Texter weighing in at 806-680-2790 regarding the SCOTUS ruling on the Texas border, giving the president complete authority that should work to Trump's advantage when he gets reelected. In his first term, he was fighting numerous lawsuits on the border policy. Now we have a Supreme Court ruling that will give him reign on the border. What do you think? Well, it should, but let me tell you, the Democrats are gonna sue as much as possible. And it kind of depends on the border policy that Trump wants to put in place. We'll see what happens. Listen, when it comes to building the wall, yeah, Trump should absolutely have every. The federal government has not only the right, it is their job to secure the border. That's their job. It's job number. It is one of the main jobs of the U.S. government is to protect our borders. Alicia from Vegas says it's great here. May not be bright red, but at least it's not a lost cause. No 10-day waiting period. Always concert to go to. Great buffets. Usually pretty darn toasty here. Can you tell I'm a California transplant? I'll be going to Vegas in a couple of weeks. I like Vegas. Vegas is fun. See, Mark in California. Maybe it's a school district should fly the Confederate flag first from time to time. Since Texas was a Confederate state for 4 years, they'd love that. I like that they flew the Revolution flag. That's pretty good. Lee in Abilene, Texas Nationalist Movement gathered 40% more petition signatures than needed to force Texas referendum on the primary ballot. Rinaldi rejected the signatures, saying Texas voters are the wrong kind of voters, so he illegally silenced all Republicans that signed the petition. Well, it was just thrown out not by it wasn't Matt Rinaldi himself who threw out the signatures. There was a process, and even the court system looked at this and said that the votes or a number of the signatures were not gathered in the right way. Now, people may not like that, but the fact that it took the Texas folks so long to get a resolution, or excuse me, a brief back to the court system after they had already had missed the deadline. You know, you can, and I think Matt Rinaldi was wrong when he said it's not they're the wrong kind of voters. That was on a list of things that Matt Rinaldi has said that was wrong and not very bright. That's another one of them that ranks right up there. But this isn't just on Matt Rinaldi, and some of this goes back on the Texas movement not having all their stuff together. Sorry to say it. But it is when you're missing deadlines and court filings, it's hard to blame just Matt Rinaldi and other people. Another text: I'm blessed to have a home in Florida and Table Rock Lake in Missouri. Florida, the beaches are white and as fine as baby powder. Weather is great. Rivers crystal clear. Fishing is wonderful. Lots of wildlife in Missouri. Wooded hills are perfect for hiking. The lake and rivers, ice so cold, so clear, you can see 8 feet down. Also, great fishing. But the best thing about both is the people. Both places are very conservative, fly their American flags with pride, allow their neighbors to live their lives, but they're there if their neighbors need help. We protect our homes and communities as we need. We are armed and know proper use of our firearms to teach our children the right way to respect others, teach them the consequences of their actions, teach them our history, and say the Pledge of Allegiance and have a prayer before every high school activity. We dare anyone to try and take away our way of life. So, yes, very proud of my surroundings. That from Greg in Missouri. Table Rock Lake in Missouri sounds pretty nice. I may have to check out Missouri, see what's happening there. We got Elizabeth weighing in as well. What do I like about where I live? When I heard you first pose the question, I thought you were wondering how I like my yard or how great the kitchen is or so forth. Thanks for clarifying. I grew up in Lubbock, moved away a couple of times. At one time, I would boast about how I escaped from Lubbock, but always managed to return. I'm here to stay now. It would take literally an act of Congress to extract me from my hometown. Lubbock's about the right size, have down-to-home feel with roughly all people who are genuinely kind-hearted because I grew up here, went to tech for 2 degrees, taught school here. It's rare that I go someplace and don't recognize or know someone. I like that. Also like that Lubbock's large enough and we have lots of activities and some strong industries and businesses. Great text there, Elizabeth. Enjoy the rest of the evening. When we come back, we'll get into some New Hampshire news.
The Chad Hasty Show, a presentation of the Texas Town Square Media Network. The views and opinions expressed during the Chad Hasty Show are not necessarily the views of this station staff, management, advertisers, or Town Square Media. Broadcasting from the great state of Texas, this is The Chad Hasty Show. News and views with a Lone Star perspective. You can sound off during the show by sending Chad a text at 806-680-2790. That's 806-680-2790. Or call in at 1-800-687-0790. Now, here's Chad Hasty.
Welcome back to the Chad HD Show. Final hour of the program. Do appreciate you being out there. A lot to get into in this final hour of the program, including some local headlines that we'll be getting into. Of course, your text messages as well, as we've had quite a few texts today. People weighing in on their today's National Compliment Day. So what we're doing is asking you to basically give a compliment about where you live, the place you live, your area of the state, your state in general, if you want to. What do you like about where you live? What do you like about the city you live in? Or, maybe you're out in the county somewhere. What do you love about the Panhandle, West Texas, the Big Country, Texoma, or, I don't know, maybe even in places in Missouri or Florida that you like. Maybe Vegas as well. You can text in at 806-680-2790. That's 806-680-2790. Mark in California. I live in the lower interior of the state, out in California. Live in the lower interior of the state next to Mexico. The Mexican food here is amazing. Very regional. Haven't found anything like it in all my broader travels. The carne asada is to die for. All right. Sounds pretty good. Now you're making us hungry. That's basically what is happening now. Now you're just making us hungry. A texture earlier. Let's see. There's nothing good about Abernathy. Okay, one good thing, a Little Slice of Heaven restaurant. I still have to make it there. I still have to go. Maybe this weekend I'll get out there. It's like it's on my list. I don't know why I haven't been to a Little Slice of Heaven. Nick, it sounds like a little slice of heaven, doesn't it? And you would think that's a place you want to go to. And I haven't been yet. I don't know why. Maybe this weekend is when I'll get out there. Let's see. Ben Runkles out in Bovina has texted in. Dear Chad, you know what I like about where I live? I like the fact that most folks don't want to live in Bovina. Folks who understand that are my kind of people. I really don't want to live where a lot of folks want to be. You know why? Because most folks are stupid. And from Ben Runkles out in Bovina, weighing in this evening, he has spoken. 806-680-2790. You can send in your thoughts. I've been sent this so many times over the last 24 hours. A candidate has announced in the Lubbock area they're running for House District 84 as a Democrat. They'll be challenging Carl Tepper. Noah Lopez of Lubbock announcing that he's running for state rep for the 84th House District, which is entirely in Lubbock County, includes most of the city of Lubbock. According to KCBD, Lopez has advocated at the Texas State Capitol for state funding for community college while serving at South Plains College as a senator in the college's student government. Well, that's good. He is a younger guy. He looks like he took a selfie for his official campaign photo. You know that's always good when your official campaign photo is a selfie with you looking longingly into the distance. Things should go well. Lopez says that his life is what's motivated him to run. Lopez works as a barista for Starbucks. Oh. And he says that he is more qualified than his opponent, Carl Tepper. Oh. Well, I will say this. I've never seen Carl Tepper make a cup of coffee. And I've never seen, that doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but I haven't seen it. I have not seen Tepper make a cup of coffee. Maybe he can. I don't know. Maybe Tepper's good at a latte. I don't know. The slogan for the campaign of Lopez is "Power to the People," which is very original. I think Beto O'Rourke will sue him to take that back. He says that it represents everything he wants to advocate for. I mean, this guy's a far left, crazy college kid, but, he's a college kid. He says, "My campaign is going to be powered by the people, grassroots. I will always advocate for the working people. I will not be a puppet to corporations." He works for Starbucks. I mean, you kind of are a puppet for a big corporation because you work for Starbucks. Lopez running unopposed in the Democrat primary. The general election later this year on November 5th. So, there you go. They could the different skills learned at Starbucks will help them there, I'm sure. 806-680-2790. I'm not trying to be mean about Starbucks. I'm not trying to, let's say a texture. I've never seen Carl Tepper. What does that mean? I mean, he's been on the show numerous times. What do you mean you've never seen him, heard from? What do you mean? I mean, he's not working at Starbucks. We may have to get Tepper in soon for another Tepper tantrum. We may have to. It may be about time to get him back in. 806-680-2790. I wonder, because he's not going to be a corporate shill, man. He's not going to be a corporate shill. So do you have to request days off for work to go to the debates? Or, like, since you're not going to be a puppet of the government or a puppet of the corporation, if the corporation tells you have to work on a on a Saturday night, whenever a debate happens, do you just say, man, I'm not going to work your shift. I'm going to go debate? I don't know how that works. You got to be careful if you don't want to be a puppet of the corporation out there that employs you. 806-680-2790. I am trying to be nice. Let's see, quite a few. We're getting multiple school districts that are having to close due to illnesses. Story, this one out of News at Channel 6, multiple school closures due to illness outbreak. Benjamin ISD, Archer City ISD, Olney ISD, Graham ISD, Crowell ISD, temporarily shutting down schools due to flu outbreaks, along with other infectious diseases. So stay tuned to your local school districts, see if they're doing anything. But the flu's going around. The flu's going around. It's getting bad, and I know people have been sick for a while with the upper respiratory illnesses and being sick. And some people are testing negative for the flu. They're testing negative for COVID. They don't know what they've got. They got something nasty that's going around. Let's see, Rob in Abilene. Chad, I heard that Haley is moving to Bovina. Well, that I have not heard that rumor, but that's not going to make Ben Runkles happy. Let's see, Rick, I don't think Carl works for a big corporation. Well, I mean, look, if you're a far lefty, you have to be against the big corporations, okay? Like this, what's his name? Who's running? I forgot his name already. Anyway, so the Democrat running against Carl Tepper, I'm not trying to be mean. I just don't know what his name is. If you're a far lefty, and especially if you're a younger far lefty, you have to understand, you hate big corporations. You have to say you hate big corporations, but at the same time, you work for corporations like Starbucks, and you're on your Apple iPhone, and you've got your AirPods and everything else, and your Nikes and all that kind of good stuff. So you have to rage against the corporations. And then at the same time buy all their stuff because you want to be cool and well liked by everybody. 806-680-2790. So yeah, numerous school districts in the Wichita Falls area, also in the Abilene area, have also temporarily closed because of the flu. I'm trying to remember when I was a kid if my school ever closed because kids got sick. And I don't think it ever happened. I don't believe it. Just like when we had the cold front that came through in Lubbock and Texas Tech shut down for the morning because the wind chills were cold. I remember being a student at Tech, literally snow on the ground and wind blowing, and Tech officials going, no, we're not canceling. You go to school. You're going to class. Now what do they do? Oh, it's going to be cold. Wind chill. Oh, no. Yeah, students have to wear jackets and stuff. We got to shut it down. And now schools, I mean, you get kids sick, and they're shutting down the entire school. That's why you have parents who get sick and tired of it. They're going to take their kids out. 806-680-2790. When we come back, we'll get into some national headlines, your phone calls, your text, and more.
The Chad Hasty Show can be heard all over West Texas, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m. Tune in on News Talk 95.1 and 790 KFYO in Lubbock, News Talk 940 in Amarillo, News Talk 94.7 and 1470 KYYW in Abilene, and in Wichita Falls on News Talk 96.3 and 1290. The Chad Hasty Show. Make it a part of your drive home, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m.
Clay Travis and Buck Sexton.
All right, coming up on the Thursday edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show. Day past the New Hampshire results. All eyes now on what's next. What's going to happen in South Carolina. Other follow-on states we'll discuss, plus Clay.
Got a couple of great guests. Carrie Lake running for Senate in Arizona, and our friend Riley Gaines. All that and more. Thursday edition, Clay and Buck. Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. Tomorrow morning at 11.
Bill Berry Show, weekday mornings 8:30 to 11 on the News and Talk of West Texas. News Talk 95.1 and 790 KFYO.
Back to the Chad Hasty Show. Appreciate you being out there today. Let's see. Senator John Cornyn has endorsed Donald Trump, and he should. In fact, it's time for everybody in the Republican Party to come together, unite, and back Donald Trump. He's going to be the nominee. He's going to be the nominee. It's going to happen. So just get ready for it. Just absolutely get ready for Donald Trump. He's going to be the nominee. Now, I was listening to Clay and Buck earlier today. And Clay Travis, he wasn't exactly endorsing the idea of Nikki Haley as vice president. But he was saying that Nikki Haley needed to either be VP or somewhere in the cabinet. And here's where I disagree with that. One, Nikki Haley, she's going to be a heartbeat away from the presidency. I don't know about you. I don't want Nikki Haley a heartbeat away from the presidency. There are other women and candidates who, if you're concerned about the independents, if you're concerned about the moderates, if you're concerned about Republican women not voting for Trump, there are other people out there that are much more aligned with Trump, much more aligned with the voters than Nikki Haley as VP. Yeah, Buck was saying that having Haley as Secretary of State, and that's probably better than VP. That's probably better than VP, but you may want a fresh set of eyes, even as Secretary of State. No one votes for Secretary of State, by the way. No one, like when I heard Clay and Buck say or release who the cabinet members are going to be, nobody cares. The nerds of us care. You know, we'll be like, oh, man, this is great. This is fantastic. Oh, we've got to really. The average person and who they want to reach when Clay and Buck were talking about this, the person they're trying to reach is the housewife, the suburban housewife. Let me tell you something, folks. The suburban housewife who's taking care of the kids, maybe also has a job. She's got more on her plate. She's not concerned with who's going to be in the president's cabinet. That's not her number one worry about the presidency. The suburban housewife, the suburban mom out there who may not appreciate Trump, like Trump, may not like how he acts. She's the one who's probably also going to the grocery store. She's the one who's probably having to haul the kids around. She already has some reasons why she's not going to vote for Joe. I don't think putting Nikki Haley as Secretary of State is just going to be a slam dunk, bring people over. I don't think putting Nikki Haley as Vice President would bring people over. Where I disagree with Trump, because I heard Trump talking about the VP pick, and he said it didn't matter. You know, people don't vote for it. Nobody, the VP pick largely doesn't matter. It absolutely does matter. He's right in that nobody votes for VP. But in this case, when you have two older candidates, who you select as VP matters. Because, again, that person is a heartbeat away. I don't want Nikki Haley in there. Now, if you look at Kristi Noem, sure, why not? I think Kristi Noem would be an interesting choice. If you're looking for other women, which again, Republicans, I hate for us to get into this trap of, well, it's got to be a woman. Yeah, it has to be a woman. Oh, it has to be. I want Trump to pick the best person, period. Male, female, black, white. I want him to pick the very best person, the person who he believes would be able to do the job correctly if, God forbid, something were to happen. That's who I want him to ultimately select. And for Trump, that person has to be someone who is loyal, who believes in what he is doing, but believes in what he says, and someone who will defend him. Someone who won't be a flip-flopper like Nikki Haley is. So that's why Nikki Haley, she's going to wrap things. I think she's going to wrap things up soon, because I don't think she wants to go through the embarrassment of getting spanked in South Carolina, which I think is going to happen. She has no pathway to the nomination. Even last night, Ronna McDaniel, of all people, Ronna McDaniel was basically telling Nikki Haley, it's time to go. Look at the math. Look at the pathways. It's time for you to be done. It's time for you to wrap it up and unite the party behind Donald Trump. And Trump has done a good job trying to unite some folks. And I think he'll continue to do that. You know, I think the best thing for Trump to do right now is just ignore Nikki Haley. She doesn't matter. The fundraising will most likely dry up pretty soon. And while, yes, there should be concern about Trump standing with suburban women and with independent voters, guess what? That concern's been out there for a long time. And what most Republican primary voters have said is, we don't care. When we come back, your phone calls, your text messages, and more.
Call in to the Chad Hasty Show at 1-800-687-0790. The Chad Hasty Show, broadcasting on the Texas Town Square Media Network.
Today's markets from the Texas Department of Ag.
Well, howdy, neighbors. Texas feeder cattle auctions are up, reporting prices $4 to $15 higher. Cattle futures are up, with February live cattle futures up 70 cents to close at $175.35. And January feeder cattle futures were up 82 cents to close at $231.82. March cotton futures are up 0.8 points, closing at 85.40. March wheat futures are up 8 cents, closing at $6.25 per bushel. And March corn was up 6 cents to close at $4.52 per bushel. March soybean futures are up a penny, closing at $12.40 per bushel. And March soybean meal futures are up $2.20 to close at $363.30 per ton. January class 3 milk futures were down a penny, closing at $15.18. And March crude oil futures were up 72 cents to close at $75.09 per barrel. And the Dow Jones was down 98 points to close at 37,806. And that's the market roundup from the Texas Department of Agriculture. I'm Marshall Webb, filling in for Commissioner Sid Miller. And remember, friends, Texas agriculture matters. Sold!
The news and talk of West Texas. News Talk 95.1 and 790 Chad Hasty, talking the news at the start, middle, and end of your drive home and when news breaks. This is the Chad Hasty Show.
All right, welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. Appreciate you being out there this evening. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Let's see, Paul T. from Michigan weighing in. Couldn't agree with you more. Having Haley as VP picked as a VP pick makes me go from a 100% Trump backer to plugging my nose when I drop the ballot. If Trump lets the media or anyone else determine who he should pick for VP, he's making a huge error. I also want the best person available for the job. That sure as hell isn't Haley. By the way, share your love for the revolutionary flag. For the past 25 years, I've flown a 5x8 American flag directed below it, the 3x5 Betsy Ross. Very nice. Now, Paul out in Michigan, I don't know if you're a Wolverine fan or not, but the news is you're losing your head coach. That's the latest. If you're a Wolverine fan, that Jim Harbaugh out going to Los Angeles to be the Chargers' new head coach. A 5-year deal for Harbaugh. So it looks like he's leaving Michigan, going to the Chargers, which it looked like he was always going to the Chargers anyway. But, Harbaugh to the Chargers. That's some news coming out in the last 40 minutes or so. 806-680-2790. You can send in your thoughts, weigh in on the text line. Senate Republicans coming to grips with another Donald Trump nomination. This is from NBC News. Republican voters on track to nominate Donald Trump for president for a third successive election cycle, leaving his GOP skeptics in the Senate at various points in the 5 stages of grief as he marches to the nomination. Some, like Senator John Cornyn of Texas, have reached the acceptance stage following Trump's comfortable victories in Iowa and New Hampshire. Cornyn, a former Republican whip, has previously argued that Trump can't win a 2024 general election due to his inability to appeal to voters outside his core base. Now he's one of 30 senators to endorse Trump for president. Quote, I think the most single important thing we can do is to replace Joe Biden, Cornyn said on Wednesday. So I think it's important to unify behind the candidate. I respect the voters' choices in Iowa and New Hampshire. I think you'll see it repeated in South Carolina. He added a piece of advice for Trump. Pick Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, the failed GOP presidential candidate who was well liked by Senate colleagues, as vice presidential nominee. Other senior Republicans closer to the bargaining phrase, unwilling to pronounce Trump the nominee, but saying they'll back him if he secures the nomination. Quote, voters are breaking heavily in his favor. He's commanding position. I've said that all along. I'll support the nominee, Senate Minority Whip John Thune of South Dakota said. He had endorsed Tim Scott for president, told reporters if Trump is the nominee, I'll do what I can to help the team win the presidency and the Senate. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, who has a tumultuous relationship with Trump, declined Tuesday to answer multiple questions about the former president, his legal problems with the GOP primary, telling reporters that only he was watching the New Hampshire primary with great interest. On Wednesday, after Trump was pronounced the winner, McConnell stayed quiet when asked if he planned to endorse him. Quote, I don't have any news to make on that, McConnell said. These people hate Trump so much. They hate him so much. And if you can't get behind Trump now, again, I understand if you were in love with Ron DeSantis and you can't bring yourself to do it, you're in love with Nikki Haley, you can't bring yourself to do it. I guess I'll give you a day or two, but it's time to move on. You should have seen the writing on the wall. Some others say they plainly say they won't support Trump even if he wins the nomination. Susan Collins of Maine being one of them. Collins said that each senator has a choice to make his or her own decision. I'm glad to hear last night Nikki Haley is determined to stay in. Let's see, that's all. There you go. There's another example. Susan Collins of Maine, not conservative. Very excited about Nikki Haley. Very happy that Nikki Haley is staying in this thing. Very excited that Nikki Haley is going to be there. Fox News was reporting last night that a large percentage of New Hampshire Republicans won't vote for Trump. Fox News voter analysis looked at 1,800 voters in the New Hampshire Republican primary, found that over one-third of them said they would never vote for the former president. Trump defeated UN Ambassador Nikki Haley by roughly 12 points Tuesday night, did so by garnering 54.5% of the New Hampshire vote. The granted state is unique because it allows unaffiliated voters to register on the day of voting, allowing voters who identify as independent or Democrat to vote in a GOP primary. While Trump predictably called it a huge victory, signaled to his surrogates to call for Haley to drop out, the margin of victory isn't that big. Now, this is from Mediaite. What Mediaite won't tell you is that poll numbers actually, this was actually a pretty good win by Trump. There were so many people who were saying this was going to be Nikki Haley's state, that she was going to do well. She did overperform, but she overperformed because of how many quote-unquote independents and unaffiliated voters went and voted for her. Now, the question that everybody is asking is, well, will Trump be able to win those voters? Maybe. Maybe they stay home. Maybe they go and vote for Joe. I would hope they would not go and vote for Joe. Maybe they would not go and vote for Joe Biden. Maybe they would stay home, but I would hope that they would be highly motivated, even if they don't like Trump, to get this guy out of office. Again, you don't have to date him. You don't have to marry Trump. You don't have to date Trump. You don't have to be BFFs with Trump. You don't have to think of him as the preacher in chief. You don't have to look at him as a role model for your children or grandchildren. What is best for our nation? What is best for the Constitution? What is best to turn this country around? You've seen what Joe's done with it. You've seen what the leftists have done with it. Do you really want to continue down that road? And these are the type of things that people are going to have to discuss in many places. And it's going to take a lot of voters out there, too, to have this discussion with their friends and their neighbors, with family members, too. To say, I know you don't like the guy, but you know what? Doesn't matter. Because we've got to turn this country around. We've got to get this country in better shape. We've let the Democrats have a shot. Look what Joe's done with it. Do you really want to give him another 4 years? Is that what you really want to do? Do you think you can, number one, do you think you personally can afford it? Number two, do you think this nation can afford it? 806-680-2790. You can send in your thoughts on the text line. New Hampshire voters that were not classified as Republican voters, you kind of have to wonder, they were paid to vote for Nikki by all the big money that's backing her. That from Linda. Listen, I totally... We've seen this before where voters have moved over. If you remember Operation Chaos, back during the Hillary and Barack Obama, we've seen where it's happened before, where you've had the crossover voter because the Democrat or Republican primary didn't matter. We've seen it before. With Nikki Haley, I think part of it is if asked, if you're a diehard Nikki Haley voter and you walk right outside after voting and someone asks you, hey, would you vote for Trump if Nikki Haley doesn't win? You may say no. But then don't discount the amount of Democrats who are just going over to try and do their portion of Operation Chaos. You can't discount that. And, were some people paid? Maybe. Maybe they just went over because of their hatred for Trump. Listen, there's a deep-seated hatred of Donald Trump out there. We don't always see it because of where we live, but you go into some more of these liberal areas, there are people who absolutely hate the guy. Absolutely hate him. 1-800-687-0790. When we come back, your phone calls, your text messages, and more.
Clay Travis and Buck Sexton.
All right, coming up on the Thursday edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show. Day past the New Hampshire results. All eyes now on what's next. What's going to happen in South Carolina. Other follow-on states we'll discuss, plus Clay.
Got a couple of great guests. Carrie Lake running for Senate in Arizona, and our friend Riley Gaines. All that and more. Thursday edition, Clay and Buck.
Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. Tomorrow morning at 11.
There will be one less birthday party to celebrate today. One less coffee date with a friend today. One less family dinner today. Because there will be one less motorcycle rider on the road today. On average, a motorcyclist is killed on Texas roads every day. When you're behind the wheel, obey the speed limit and be extra careful at intersections. Let's start turning that one less into one more. Please share the road and look twice for motorcycles. There's a life riding on it. A message from TxDOT.
Culture Today on News Talk 95.1 and 790 KFYO.
You've got a cute way of talking.
All right, welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show as we begin to wrap things up. Paul T. from Michigan, not a Wolverine fan at all, he says. Says he's a Longhorns fan, so not a fan of the Michigan Wolverines. 806-680-2790. Great to hear from so many people. That's even from all over the place, really. Very cool to hear from folks all over the state, all over the nation as well. What you love about the place you live, where you live, why you love it, what you like about it. It was National Compliment Day, so it was good to hear, compliments about where you live. We do complain about things. From time to time we complain here on the show about what's going on in our communities. So it's good to hear positive things that go on as well. 806-680-2790. That's 806-680-2790. Don't forget, you can download the Chad Hasty Show podcast. It's available right after the show. And we'll have that interview with Ken Cuccinelli. If you missed it at the very beginning of the show, you don't want to miss out on that one. And you can download that. Also, the Current and Cask podcast. Don't forget about that podcast, hosted by myself and Matt Martin, where we talk a little whiskey and we also talk a little politics and also get into the everyday life type of topics that are out there. So that's something you can download from your favorite podcast platforms. Let's see. We're going to hold that. We're going to hold the story of the Washington Post. Nearly 30% of the U.S. now identify as having no religious affiliation. We're going to hold on to that for Friday, because I think that'll be a good Friday topic to get to. How about this? Jon Stewart, he was formerly with The Daily Show, apparently is going back to The Daily Show. I guess with Trump being the nominee, Comedy Central wants to be relevant again, and they're going to bring Jon Stewart back just for Mondays only. The comedian will return to Comedy Central's The Daily Show every Monday beginning February 12th through the presidential election. Stewart will return as executive producer of The Daily Show as well. And so I guess with Trump on the ballot, with Biden on the ballot, they can't find anyone else to do The Daily Show. Trevor Noah ended a 7-year ride on The Daily Show. I got to be honest with you, because Trevor Noah was very woke when he took it over, all that kind of stuff. He absolutely ruined that show. When Jon Stewart was doing The Daily Show, people were talking about it, good and bad, but people were talking about The Daily Show all the time. And Trevor Noah just ruined it, just crashed it into the ground. So I'm guessing that the folks over at Comedy Central are hoping that Jon Stewart can breathe a little bit of life back into that TV show. Maybe he can. I think most people have moved on. I forgot that it was even on TV still. I really didn't know. Again, I don't watch a lot of TV. If it's not streaming, I'm not. If it's not streaming or sports, I'm usually not watching it. And Comedy Central and The Daily Show, not something I have seen in a long time. The Bidens have invited Kate Cox, Dallas mom who sued to terminate her pregnancy, to the State of the Union address. The First Lady, Jill Biden, has invited the 31-year-old Dallas woman who sued to terminate her pregnancy to attend the State of the Union as her guest in March. So I'm guessing abortion will be a big centerpiece of the president's State of the Union address. I'm sure that'll go over well. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Follow me on social media at Chad HD Radio. Thanks to everyone who texted in and called in and got in touch on social media. Stay safe out there. Stay healthy as well. Be sure to tune in tomorrow, beginning at 5 p.m. God bless you all.
The Chad Hasty Show, a presentation of the Texas Town Square Media Network. The views and opinions expressed during the Chad Hasty Show are not necessarily the views of this station staff, management, advertisers, or Town Square Media.